going to get grass between club and ball, almost like a bunker shot to a certain extent. So our key thing here is, if we play our normal shot, we're probably going to find there's going to be a lot of material getting between club and ball, not far from ideal. So the natural thing is to think, right, I'm going to play the ball back a little bit more. That's going to allow us to naturally have a little bit more of a steeper down angle of attack, more of a downward angle of attack. But that could well mean you're not going to have enough loft to get this ball to come out of the grass. That's the key. We want to get it out of the grass early, because then we can get something with it. So the key is think, am I going to change my loft? If this shot playing up towards those flags there, if in doing this, in playing it back or leaning the handle forward more, I've changed the loft significantly. So I could be all of a sudden stood there with a 50-degree club, and all of a sudden it's playing 44, 45 degrees or 40 degrees. That's fine as long as I recognise that. That's one of the key things. It might also mean you need to use more loft. So for me, when I'm playing out of this sort of lie, I might go up one club. So I might go up from my gap wedge to my sand wedge, or sand wedge to lob wedge, because I'm expecting the ball to behave when it hits the green more like the previous club. This is also where one of our setup ideas can be really useful. If we've got the club sat like this, it kind of forces the grass apart, a bit like the sole of a sand iron or some of your hybrids and clubs like that. So if I get up on the toe, get to that ball a little bit easier, forces the grass apart. So I'm probably going to feel like I need to make a little bit of a bigger swing, because we're going to get something between club and ball. That's going to slow our club down, but the action really doesn't remain any different. I'm still trying to not really do too much down here, just really letting it go back with more body turn. And same in the follow down. I'm just allowing it there's all this stuff that tends to come in there, and this again is going to affect your shot, particularly because we're using clubs with loft. So we're going to find we're going to have to make some sort of form changes. Again, people come in and they think, oh yeah, no, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and then they forget, that the ball's lower than their feet. That's going to change the shot. It's the opposite, ball above your feet. Maybe I'm playing off a downslope, maybe I'm playing off an upslope. So we need to think about these shots. So first thing for me is often the downslope one, ball below your feet. So one of the toughest things is now you're going to need to use the full length of the club. You can get really low down. You've got to somehow make sure you keep the radius of your arc down by that golf ball. If we start coming up very early, we're going to miss it, we're going to hit a bit too high on the golf ball, we're going to get issues then in terms of its launch and spin. So what I'll often find when I'm down here is I also probably don't want to feel as though I make as big a swing, because again, that's going to be tougher for me to stay in the balance that lets me get to the bottom of that ball. So I might often be thinking from this sort of situation that I might play more, if I can, play it more as a running shot rather than one that I pitch very, very high in the air. So that might mean I'm using a little bit more less loft in the flow, which might be a little bit longer. The shaft, that might help me a little bit as well. So what I'm then relatively vertical if I can, but because I'm using the full length of the club and I'm using a little bit less loft, I'm not maybe making too big a swing so that I can get that ball rolling down the fairway. That always seems a little bit easier. If I go the other side, so now I've got the ball above my feet, there's a real problem that comes in when the ball's higher than your feet. This is what all your lie angles are about, I think, on faceplate tilt. So essentially now the loft is making that club point to the left, and we're using a lofted club. So that starts to become a real problem. So we've got to make sure that we allow for the fact that when I'm stood here, what to me appears to be a club looking at the target is actually a club looking left where I need to play. So I'm obviously going to have to go down the club a little bit. Also, my swing is going to be in this sort of movement straight away. So it can be a little bit more difficult sometimes to keep the ball from jumping in the air. It's quite easy off the slope to get that ball to jump up. So again, I might go a little bit lower in loft, but that's because I'm actually playing for it going up in the air. Apart from that, again, trying to keep that handle, my reference point is up here, so I'm not letting the handle get down there, I'm trying to keep it up there as much as I can. And again, I'm still thinking of my underarm throw to the flat spot on the green. So you can hear straight away I'm getting a relatively clean strike. This is kind of encouraging my turning motion, but I've got to watch out for that ball wanting to go left of target. Then the trickiest one for a lot of you, which is this ball, we're on a down slope. So straight away, if we just allow ourselves to stay vertical, the ground's it's going to be very difficult. One, to move the club back, and two, to get the club to the ball. So what we've got to think is a really simple thing is to move our spine angle, our posture, and try and get ourselves parallel with the slope. What that is going to do is it's going to take some loft off our golf club. So you've got two things you can start thinking about doing here. Point one, get more loft in your hands. Go up to your 56 degree club, your 60 degree club, whatever it is, because it's going to want to come out lower. That's going to be one protocol, and I would say that is the first protocol for most of us. Go to more loft. The second is to maybe even get the club face a little bit more open. But the key is to feel as though you stay with the slope all the way through. You see a lot of people kind of do that as they come through on these sorts of shots, to just think to help it in the air. Whereas I'm thinking, well, this is whatever I do. You know, if you do end up in a slope, if you play towards a green and you think, well, it's going to finish on a down slope, make sure you give yourself a bit of run, because it's going to run. You're going to find it very tough to stop this ball. Whereas there, I'm just moving myself a bit more, moving the ball back, but crucially keeping myself in front of it. Still up on the toe, still the same feelings, but rather than being there and I'm almost looking, my chest kind of parallel to the horizon there, my horizon now is on a different angle, so I'm trying to think myself very there, almost follow the slope a little bit. So I've still got my turn, I've not felt like I've done a lot with my hands. It's coming out much lower, so it could be that I'm going to go more lofted to try and slow it down, because there might be something on the other side, or it's a bit of a, you know, I haven't got a lot of room, but it's playing for that. The one that most of us stand there and try and do the Mickelson shot on, here's our upswing. So obviously we're going to do that same thing. Now I'm leaning towards my back foot, which is going to increase the loft of the club. So we see a lot of people when they're close around the green think, oh, I'll do this, and they kind of end up squeezing the ball into the turf a little bit. But the thing is, that won't improve the compression of the ball, because the ground's not like that when it's up. That might allow you to kind of keep that ball flight down a little bit, but it's probably a better idea to just make sure that ball maybe moves forward a bit, because if you play it back or something like that, again, you're going to have to lean back to get to that ball. You're going to find a lot of digging going on. Keep in this normal position, maybe just go a little bit less lofted. You're going to find, particularly again in the follow through, whereas the downslope, I was trying to stay with the slope. The upslope, I'm trying to stay with the slope. I'm kind of angled like this now. So even my less lofty club, I'll be able to get that cleaner contact. You can see as I'm coming through there, I'm very much finishing facing the target, but I'm looking this way, not there, dead horizontal. So it's quite a big thing for you to think about with all these short shots around the green. Don't just think, oh, I can play it exactly as I normally would. These will affect these shots massively, and it can be a really good way, I think, of getting your head around what happens on the golf course and how the golf course interrupts your golf swing and changes what you do.